started again.
I promise there aren't near as many slides for these next few things as there were for the previous ones.
I want to say one last word that was brought to my attention about that from just in terms of the overtime and out-of-class pay. I want to thank the sheriff, police chief, fire chief. They're all aware of this, and they're all taking steps. One of the things that we want to do is invite them to come speak to us at another time, because each department, it's a little bit different why it is the way it is. And so I think we need to hear that from each of the departments to have them reflect with us about why that is. And so that's very important, but it's also very important that we have that on our radar screen right now for overall expenditures in our department. So we will get that information. We will schedule a time when the different departments can come forward and talk with us. We'll also note, based on our new policies that this commission adopted in December, changes in budget, the total $50,000, need to come to this commission. And I believe that would include overtime, because those are changes in budget. We need to have the chiefs and sheriff and other department heads that are having overtime come to us on a regular basis to seek, if we're gonna spend that money out of the department, move it around to the department, we're gonna make an expenditure of that level, because we're spending more than $50,000 a month on overtime. In fact, we're spending $500,000 a month on overtime right now. And those expenditures need to come to this commission on a monthly basis so that we can review them and that we can give authority to move those forward. So I think that's another step that we can take to give folks an opportunity to help educate us as to where those expenses are coming from. Yes.
Mayor, that reminds me, in going through last Thursday's agenda, I'd like to have Lou or Reggie give, well, me or the commission, if they wanted, a tutorial on the routine business items. This week it was numbers 3 and 4. I looked at that, and there were some things in there that I do not understand. Both those items totaled $21 million. And typically you had various funds to various funds, or there was a long list of items of reclassification. It said reclass. There's some other things that I did not understand. And clearly many of them were over 50,000, and I don't know that that meets the definition of what the mayor's talking about. Are you following me what I'm talking about here? It's on the clerk's agenda.
The weekly business material.
Well,
Let's do that. Let's get that on the agenda to do an in-service on, and we can just we can start with that agenda and just walk through it. I
mean,
think that's important.
Yeah, somebody puts it on there, and there are a lot of big numbers, and it was 21 million, both items.
Or it might have been some tax items. I mean,
Well, he's got it here. I mean, there's a wide.
Mayor said.
Can I ask, just to keep us on task today, that
Yeah,
I
that's
think
fine.
we absolutely need to get that on the agenda for it's one of our 101s. We've been doing a lot of 101s with a lot of departments. I think we can use last Thursday's agenda as a perfect example.
That'd be fine. That would enable me to read future ones and determine whether there should have been some of those items brought before us.
All right, Patty.
Okay, again in October, you gave general direction that you would like to see some of your capital improvement projects be designed in 2014 and 2015 with construction to begin in 2016. And today you saw that your level of funding available for capital projects was right about $7.5 million or so. So Debbie Johnsher is going to give you a little bit more information about your capital expenditures.
Thank you, Patty. Today I'm just going to go over some information regarding the CMIP. I don't have any detailed information on the projects. I just have more of a a general, maybe some totals on what has been submitted by the departments. Last month, we sent out the request to departments to update their CMIP information for projects and equipment. And so I've got a spreadsheet here that just shows the information that we've taken in so far. And I've condensed this down quite a bit. What you're looking at the top, I've just given totals for cash projects and equipment. These are all pay-as-you-go. This is nothing that is long-term debt financed. I don't have the detail on that information. The departments did submit their request, and we were going through it and got it into a format that we could at least get some totals. However, I will say that there is still some revision to do on some of this, and I'll kind of point out what work we still need to do. But I'll start with the 2014 approved budget. This is the CMIP projects and equipment that were approved last summer as part of the budget. And you can see that we had a total of $3.6 million included in the budget. And this is also reflected back to the information that Lou gave you on the year-end totals. And then as we go into, the next column is 2014. I called it amended budget, but this includes the requests that departments have submitted for the 2014 amended budget. And you can see that it jumps up to $5.5 million, which is about just under $2 million over what we currently have budgeted for projects and equipment. And down below there, I've just listed out some of the projects that have affected this. In some areas, there may have been some reductions to some capital as departments included additional items, but overall, we did have an increase to the 2014 amended budget. And some of these items, I'll just kind of go down through. There's some fire projects, police projects, there's vehicles, and some other items. I just tried to go through and list some of the larger items, and maybe just to show an example, about 4 items down is the transit vehicles that are in there for 2014. Currently, I'm just showing that as one large amount. More than likely, we'd probably take a look at that to see if we could lease finance that, so that would bring that total down. I just haven't gone through all of that review yet to determine what items need to be adjusted. Then going on to the next column is the 2015, and I just called it budget forecast. This is the 2015 amount that was in the CMIP when we approved the budget last year. And this number also ties back to the number Lou had in his projection for 2015. I was just going to note that at that total, one reason that total is so large, when we went through the budget last year, and we determined if we needed to shift some items out from 2013 or 14, a lot of times it gets pushed to the very next year outside of what we approved for the budget. So that's why the 2015 number is so much larger than the 2014 or what the 2013 was. So that number ties back to what Lou had in his forecast. And then you move to the next column, which I called the 2015 proposed budget. And this includes not only those items and adjustments by the department, but additional items that have been added in to the 2015 budget. And there's about $2.8 million over and above what was originally in there for the $7.1 million. So now we're looking at a CMIP for 2015 cash projects only of $9.9 million. And then down below, I've also listed out some of those projects, and I've still got some revision on those. Maybe some things like the Wyandotte County Lake improvements, that might be shifted to a debt project. Some of it I just have to kind of go through the detail to see what's included in the work to see if it's a capital improvement eligible for debt financing. But right now, I am showing that in the cash capital for now.
And most of these are equipment, is that right?
On these, most of them are,
Yeah.
yes.
The other
The
question,
total CMIP is both projects and equipment, but I just highlighted some of the larger items that were included in.
what was, if I remember correctly, we've cut our CMIP in half over what we were doing previously. What was the previous amount we were spending on an annualized basis approximately?
Well, you're right, in between the cash and the debt-funded projects. We used to be at about $18 million in debt-funded. We've reduced that to 13, somewhere in there, 13 to $14 million.
$13 to $14 million.
Part of that included equipment. but then we also took our cash down by that same amount. So we pushed more stuff into lease financing and cut our cash down by about, I think from 10 to 3,
Yeah, I think so.
somewhere in that neighborhood, which accounted for most of our cash type equipment. So yeah, around half by the combination of the two.
Okay.
I would say we probably, in that time period, we also had, when we lowered our cash projects, we did see, I think, an increase in a couple of years where we shifted things to debt. We may have had a project that was originally listed as cash, and we shifted it over to debt. We also, I think, had shifted some of our annual maintenance projects that are capital improvements, but they were shifted to debt for a couple of years when we needed to reduce the cash.
And when you look at overall numbers on the budget, you'll see some tick back up in those areas, but largely that's in water pollution, where we put a fund to that enterprise fund, and we're allowing those projects to move forward, but it
So
doesn't
just
help
because
the
it
other
went
side of
up
the
doesn't mean
equation.
it's all pressure against the budget,
Right.
the general funds. That's important.
Debbie, your numbers on the bottom half, those are just requests, is that correct?
That's correct. This is not all, this was just to show the, some of the revisions that were submitted.
Just clarifying, that's not in the number above. So our built 2014 budget doesn't have any of those items below.
That's correct. Those are additions to the 2014.
So that would jump to 7.5 million.
Yeah, so we have to figure out how to incorporate, if we determine those are the priorities, we have to figure out how to incorporate those in and move other projects out. And some of them, in fairness, like the fire study, that's one you all directed us to do. We didn't spend that money last year, so that fell to the bottom line. And we know it's still a priority that we're getting done. We just haven't expended money for the work in regard to that yet.
The projects that are listed below, they're included in the amended total that I have, the
Thank
5.5 million. That 1.9 million are projects. When I bumped the 2014 approved budget up from 3.6 to 5.5, that includes those projects.
Commissioner McKiernan.
You know, just in CMIP in general, are we getting, does this reflect, have we already told departments we're going to be lean, so we want just priority projects for you? Or are we seeing really everything that could be invested in from equipment and other projects? So, I mean, is this like a self-selected subset of everything that could be accomplished or could be funded?
I haven't gone through the whole list. This is just probably, I assume, areas you saw departments submit as high priority items. They'll submit a larger, greater number of projects that they feel like need to be added. Most of those are pushed into probably 16, 17, and 18, where they're hoping to get them funded somewhere in the budget in the next 5 years. So there are a number of new ones. These are high priority items from these departments that they put forward. That's why Debbie has called those out. So there's others that they'd like to have in here, I'm sure, but these are the ones probably in that first blush.
So in terms of our 7 million up there for combined equipment and projects, theoretically that could be higher if we went to departments and said, what equipment or what projects could we use that would significantly enhance, for example, streets, or that would enhance people's perception, whatever it might be?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Just wanted to make sure that, you know, 7 million is a big number, but it could be bigger.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, and just so I'm clear, that 1.9 million is desired but has not been approved. Is that correct? Would that be?
That's correct.
appropriate?
Well, the top one has been
The
I was
approved.
top
gonna say
one-
The top one, I recall that was the will of the body.
Right.
How long
Right.
ago was that now? But I remember that one
Yes.
specifically. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Debbie, can you just forward that one time? Because Mayor Holland's on deck. Actually, he's on.
Up to the plate.
Up to, yeah.
So, issues that we've talked about in terms of costs, comprehensive comp and class study, this group has called for that. We need to get that RFP out. We need to get that done. Review of fire, police, sheriff's department. We have the fire one on the books. If we're going to do the other two departments, we need to put them on the books, right? Additional staff for commission, we've talked about that. We need to come up with, do we want to start with the one full-time equivalent that has been cut back over time, or do you have another recommendation?
If I might just chime in there, the committee that was appointed has met.
Oh, that's right.
And we have maybe a 10-minute presentation available today if it's the commission's pleasure.
Oh, let's plan on it, absolutely. In fact, it might be right after I finish reading this list, because it might be the only presentation we have. One of the things that we've also talked about is a data officer, someone whose job it is to help. The data we've seen today, much of it has been very hard to get, and facilitating that process for our data to be available for our own use, for our own data-driven decisions, is pretty important. And so that's one position. A lot of communities have a data officer, an innovation officer, which would, in my mind, not be something that would be its own silo, but it would be a horizontal that would cut across all departments and allow, create an infrastructure where we could tap into our own employees for ideas. You'd be surprised if you ask people if they have ideas of how to make things better. Some people just never been asked. And there's a lot of line department folks who, if we had an innovation system in place, could say, you know what, I've been thinking about this for years, and there's no way to get, there's no way to get that message out. But an innovation officer in the organization could do a lot to help that. We also have a notebook that you received to review for projects that the public have asked us to review. And that, I think this totals, what, $5 million? 6.2. So we have $6.2 million worth of requests. A comprehensive comp and class study will cost about, don't hold me to this, $200,000 maybe?
Yes, depending on the level we do.
$200,000. The fire study, we're looking at $200,000. Police and sheriff are going to be about in that same ballpark. So if we're going to prioritize those, we need to get them on the books. Additional staff for commission, one full-time. The other three are about one full-time equivalent. But then but those are the requests. So let's go to the committee and give your presentation.
Yeah. The
Your
committee
Honor.
has a handout.
Yes.
Could I interrupt really
Yes.
quickly and just perhaps mention that I think there might be a differentiation as you go forward too, in terms of some of these would be one-time expenditures and others would be ongoing.
Thank you. That's right. The comprehensive comp and class study and the reviews of the departments, those are going to be one-time expenses. The top two are one-time expenses. The bottom four, well, depending on what the outside requests are. There's fire's already in the budget. That's right. But the other three are not. And the outside requests, some of them are one-time expenses. Most of them are ongoing.
Mayor, where does that annual come in, that annual review we've been asking to do?
Which annual review?
Oh, the one that the survey. Where does
Oh,
that come into
The
this?
survey should be on here as well. If we're going to do an annual survey, we need to have a budget line item for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Walters.
Great. So you all know we've been talking about the commission liaison position, and it sort of evolved into a bigger discussion. Angela, Ann, and I have met a couple times, and we've talked, and we kind of decided to take just a little bit of a step back, rather than saying, okay, let's sit down and give more definition to a commission liaison position, and should we add more administrative staff, or should we do this, or should we do that? Let's try to take a bigger global picture of what we're trying to accomplish with all of the support and assistance that commissioners now receive and could receive. So the first part of this handout sort of reviews those three big goals. And we're not ready to make a final proposal or a presentation today. As you may recall, this committee has only been in existence for about a week and a half. So,
But already with a report,
But
extra
with a
credit,
written handout,
extra credit
yeah,
to the,
written
to the
handout.
group.
So we wanted to sort of present where we were and get additional comments from all interested parties. So as an overriding guiding principle, we saw about three things that we really would like to try to achieve. We want each commissioner to be able to make the, informed decisions. We want to be able to assist commissioners in promoting and accomplishing tangible results on projects and issues that they are particularly interested in. And we want to try to facilitate additional or better coordination among commissioners and also with administration. So those are sort of the opportunities that we saw that we wanted to try to talk about, get more information from the rest of the commission about, and to try to enhance. So the next section of this handout talks about, well, how would we actually try to do some of those things? So we think, as it says there, we would like to try to enhance the ability of the UG to respond to commissioner initiatives while complying with the overall budgeting process and the annual budgeting process. We understand that anything a commissioner might have in their pocket about a specific program certainly has to comply with the overall structure of government. We also think clarifying for staff the desires of administration and commissioners related to the involvement of commissioners' initiatives would be helpful. Creating improved communication protocols for transparent communication between and among commissioners and administration, and to create an improved process for commissioners to affect their initiatives or sort of control the agenda as it relates to their initiative and move it through the process. We think there are opportunities for improvement in all those things. So we did kind of try to take stock of what we have now. We have obviously support staff in the commission office. We have a newly appointed liaison, and some of the things that are currently done and are done, I think, fine. Those people help us establish meetings and communication with the UG administration and staff. They respond to, answer and respond to direct contact by the citizens. And one thing that may be worth talking about is not only recording contact from citizens, but also initiating response more so than is currently done. And then we certainly have all the office support and that kind of administrative support that we want. So on the second page, we've listed out 7 things that might either be enhanced or might even be considered new categories of support. And these are things that the three of us are interested in, but they're also things we've heard other commissioners express interest in. So if I haven't phrased it or I haven't represented the kernel of the idea that I'm trying to represent from other commissioners, please feel free to weigh in. So I'll just go down. 1, we want to deliver information from the commissioners to administration so that administration can clearly have on their radar screen things that are specifically important to various commissioners. Secondly, we want to have delivered information from administration to commissioners. Same goal, to have everybody informed about everything that's going on. And particularly when there are initiatives from administration that specifically affect a specific commissioner's district. A third comment might be that we would need the ability to have someone available to commissioners who would actually generate a work product. This might be a report, might be a resolution for consideration by the commissioners, or any other number of things. Number 4 might be a little bit of a duplication, but once the commissioner has an idea or a program or an initiative and it's identified, somebody needs to be available to facilitate that initiative through the process of accomplishment. So I think all commissioners think that would be an advantageous addition. Number 5, keep commissioners informed regarding or advise commissioners of specific strategies for accomplishing some of these initiatives. And I think what we were thinking of there was a commissioner might have a wonderful idea but not really know the best way to get it accomplished within government or within the county, the general public. So it would be very helpful to have someone available to the commissioners to assist in that kind of implementation thought process. 6, coordinate work within the commissioners and between commissioners. And 7, inform commissioners of the status of various projects. So there may be other things, and we're certainly throwing that out for additional consideration, but these are some of the things that came up in our discussions. Some very seasoned commissioners and some rookie commissioners. So we have a variety of experience to draw on, but these are some of the support, I call them support activities, but some of the things that could be undertaken to help commissioners excel. There are 2 other, I'm calling them related issues, and I think this is something worthy of just general discussion as well. There seems to be an opportunity to improve a process by which a commissioner can submit an initiative, get it in the process, whether it be a committee, get it on the committee agenda, or get it in a budgeting program or something, so that each commissioner can at least have a process under their control that they can proceed with having an initiative thoughtfully considered by the entire commission. And so we thought that it might be valuable to talk about establishing a process whereby commissioners could go to the various standing committees and have an agenda item placed on the agenda. Obviously, the standing committee would have to evaluate it. If it has budget applications, it has to go through a normal process. But at least it would be a written protocol by which initiatives could be at least considered. We also talked about a discretionary fund, and this would be a concept whereby sometimes in order to have an initiative evaluated by the entire commission, somebody has to gather information or put together a report or do a minor feasibility study or something. You can't just walk in with a good idea and not have any answers. We don't really have a mechanism whereby an individual commissioner can make that happen without going through some processes. So that is sort of our last item for consideration, and we would like, obviously, feedback. And that would be just the concept of establishing a budget controlled by each commissioner, but certainly subject to all of the guidelines, the spending guidelines that governs all spending by the UG, but which could be used by each individual commissioner to support and promote their initiatives and programs. So that's how far we've gotten in the first several days of our tenure. So at this point, I would love to have any comments from anybody at the table.
My quick observation is that polling the commissioners and polling the public received two top priorities, which includes communication and customer service. Is that right?
Yes, you are.
I think that's compelling, and we need to. I like articulating a better lines of communication and better lines of customer service, even for the elected officials. Coming in terms of communication, I think that should be easy to fix. But I like your articulation of how to better do that.
Congratulations to the committee for doing such a great job in such a short time. I have a question about the section that talks about the initiation process for commissioner initiatives, particularly the part about going to the standing committees and getting commission approval or denial. Did you anticipate going to the commission only if money would be required to fulfill an initiative? For instance, let's say my initiative was going to neighborhood groups, or I'm just making this up, and everybody's going to pick up trash in their block. That wouldn't take anything. You know, I wouldn't need to, I would think, come to a standing committee and say that. So is this what we're talking about in each case, or what are the caveats, the parameters you might have thought about?
I was going to field it if you want me to. So what has happened in the past is that some commissioners have brought forward ideas and have been told by staff that they do not want to expend staff time until there is support from the commission. So I think the idea is that it would go to standing committee if there was going to be an expenditure of either money or significant, not like 20 minutes of staff time, but significant staff time. If you were asking for a staff member to spend a lot of time researching your idea, by getting the standing committee's approval, it would be sort of telling staff, yeah, we're interested enough in this that we want you to spend the time to investigate it. So
And
in your example, no, you wouldn't go for something like picking up trash, but if you had something that wasn't going to cost money, but that was going to cost time, then you might have to come forward with it.
And we thought that was good, not only for the commissioner, but for staff as well, because it gets them out of a bind of not knowing, what to do. If they have a firm direction from a committee or from the commission itself, then there's not going to be any question of whether they should or shouldn't spend time on something.
The other thing I really like about it is driving it to the standing committee. It comes back to what the guy just told us on the survey. It tells the public the initiatives that the commissioners are taking, because there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes here that we're not telling people about. And so I think having it go to the standing committee puts it on TV, lets the public hear the things you're doing. You might want to come to a standing committee and say, by the way, I'm doing a trash pickup, just as an announcement at your standing committee, to let your district know that this is something you're working on, just to let the community know this is something you're working on. So I think the more we can push to that standing committee in a straight line of communication and get the buy-in from the commission to say, yeah, we think this is worth expenditure of time, and we've done that. I mean, I could give you a lot of examples, but what there's not been, and this comes to your report, what there's not been is a clear guideline or process for how that happens. But I think it goes to that whole communication part. I think everyone at this table is working on initiatives. And I think the more we can put those out to the standing committees, it gives an opportunity for us to share that with each other and with the public.
Okay, shall we move on? In terms of, it seems like there's some, I mean, specifically to this list is additional staff for commission.
What's the next
In terms of
steps? Let's do next
process-
steps.
Yeah, in terms of the process, that's what I was going to ask.
Well, I think we would like, the committee would like to, reinforce that we would like other commissioners' comments. So even though we're just dumping this on you here, and there wasn't really any forewarning, I think for, a period of time, it would be great if you all could think about this a little bit and get some additional comments back to either of the three members of the committee would be great.
All right, Hal?
And again, it was a quick read, so, I think for every commissioner, and I realize the word commissioner here should be read broadly to include mayor, because the mayor is a commissioner. He's not outside of the commission group. In fact, I think the ordinance says so specifically, but as it relates to him in the sense that he is something separate and apart from the commissioners, I think the commission activities require a more routine half hour a month, I don't know what the right number is, with each commissioner. I find it, I catch you as I can, and you're frequently gone. I think it would help to have, just sit down for a half hour and talk about what's important to you, to us, in advance of, throwing something out at a meeting. So that, for me, that would support an enhanced activity by me in advance of, and it might forestall problems. So, but that's another 5 hours that you probably don't have to give once you get all 10 of us. So I think that and maybe it's not even once a month, maybe it's once a quarter, you have lunch with one of us or whatever, but I think it's beneficial to have face-to-face time, one-on-one, and vent or discuss ideas and projects.
I think that's fair. And I would say,
I'm not saying you're not talking to us, I'm
No.
just saying, it's just sometimes hard to get you even on the phone.
well, and I would say, I will say, I have worked to be very responsive, both personally and with staff. When someone calls and wants to meet with me, we put it on the calendar. And so if that's not happening, let me know. But I'm glad to meet with folks anytime to talk about the initiatives and how we move them forward. I think that's exactly what should be
It's just an idea to
happening.
put on here, and I'm not saying you're not, and maybe I just need to get on your calendar, and when I need to get on your, maybe.
Maureen, can you make sure that Hal's on my calendar right away?
Well, also, there might be some commissioners that don't want to meet with him at all, too, so.
There is that possibility.
Do you want to name names? I just want to. Any way that I can help, I'm ready to help.
Did we set a deadline of maybe the 17th for everybody to have their comments to us, and then the committee can meet again and solidify a more detailed report on what we propose?
Looking ahead at the calendar, when is the 17th is a Monday?
St. Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's Day. So what we would be looking at then would be, you would be able, if you had the comments by Monday the 17th, you'd be able to come to us on the 20th and give us an update. Would that be enough time? No, maybe not.
Shortest committee.
But that's fine. You're not looking, I'm wanting to know, how soon do you want it on the agenda?
No, I think the 20th would work. Now,
Or
there
do you want,
might
if
be,
you want another week, I'm not rushing you. I'm just saying,
yeah, there might be some items here that really require budgeting input. So if that's the case,
I think it depends partially on what kind of comments we get back. If
Sure.
the comments are along these same lines, then we've already had a lot of discussion about that, but if we get totally new ideas, we might need a little more time to sort through.
Yeah.
But
The reason I threw out the 20th is that's when we want to fix our budget priority direction to the administrator. And so
That would be a good time then.
that would be a good time then. Okay. Ann?
Well, I was just gonna, I don't want to belabor the conversation. Obviously, you can bring your comments forward.
Can you speak into the microphone, please, for the courtesy of the people out in TV land?
Sorry. So I don't want to belabor the conversation, but Hal, I know one of the things that you brought up, I'm going to just walk through it a little bit, so I work better with examples. We talked about Jim in a quiet zone that he's working on in his district, and how does he begin to work on that? And that's how we came up with the process where he comes to standing committee and basically says, hey, commissioners, I want to work on this quiet zone. Can I use staff to do that? Are you all okay with that? And we felt like if somebody brought something forward that was questionable, that the burden does fall on us as fellow commissioners to say, no, our example was legalizing marijuana. We thought that probably people would not be interested in working on that. So I'm just
We
saying.
don't want to tie up our legal staff
Yeah.
working on that.
Yeah, probably not. That's probably not a good use of time. So that was the one example. And then after he got through that piece of it, then he could utilize staff to work on this. But also the other piece of it that you might have more questions about, might want to send us, that I want to talk just a little bit about, is the discretionary fund. Right now, you all know that we have we changed this last year, which I thought was great, which was the travel fund, that we each have so much in travel. And then, if somebody correct me if I'm wrong, we have a little bit of discretionary money. I forget what that is. It's like $500. And it's kind of separate pots of money. The one thing we had sort of talked about is there are initiatives that commissioners will take that sometimes will require a little more assistance than what staff can give. And yet, even though they've been directed. So, for example, I'm going to pick on Hal because I'm sure he's okay with this. He is working on this sign ordinance changes. And it's a fairly big undertaking. If he was able to say, this is such a big priority with me, I'm going to use some of my discretionary fund, my commission discretionary fund, to hire someone to write up these changes in the sign ordinance so that we would know it's legal, have our legal staff review, and then bring it forward for approval. That was kind of the idea. The same with the quiet zone for Jim. Maybe there's a preliminary study that could be done before, staff gets involved and spends a lot of time on it. That might be $1,500 that could be done by an outside firm, or has to be done by an outside firm because it involves the railroad. So it would be that discretionary money. I think the accountability piece that I think is there is that it forces the commissioner. It's not an exorbitant amount of money, and it forces the commissioner to decide. You're only going to have so much money in that fund. If you want to go to a conference and go to some training, you probably aren't going to have any money left over to do a study. So it's going to force people to prioritize what's important to them and the best way to move their district forward. So now, if you have any questions about that, you can send them to us or whatever.
Okay. Anything else?
Okay. So the next topic for discussion are requests for funding from outside organizations, and Reggie's prepared to address. We have 8 slides that I've encouraged Reggie to go through expeditiously, and I'm going to keep the keyboard over here, Reggie. So
February 6th, we got our first public hearing where we allow citizens and organizations to come forward with proposals, and we require that they submit formal proposals by February the 20th. They had a deadline for that day, and the commission was provided a notebook with the proposals on February 27th. I've broken them down into different categories. The categories that were broken down for you all were for citizens and also organizations. There were 4 citizens and 34 organizations. On these slides, I've broken them down into those that requested based on community service, and also those that specifically requested CDBG funds, and then also those that are infrastructure and construction projects, and then those that are requested increased services from the government and then there were some that were others that did not fit in either of those categories. So there were 16 in total that requested community service proposals, and they came in at $1.4 million. The next ones were two folks that specifically, or two organizations that specifically asked for CDBG funds. It came in at $124,000. There are some that possibly could have community development funds that could go to them, but these folks specifically asked for community development funds. And the next one are infrastructure projects, and these organizations asked for things to be done as far as construction and infrastructure, and there were 8 of them, and they came in at $2.3 million. The next one is, we had 7 organizations and citizens that requested $415,000 for increased government services, which range from more fire and police to transit studies and also new bus lines. And these are the other fundings that didn't quite fall up under the other categories. We had 5 of them that were requesting, for instance, the Kansas Black Chamber wants to get a portion of our hotel tax. Also, the downtown shareholders, they want additional funds for $75,000 for security and cleanup in the downtown area. And then we also had the Wyandotte County Fair Association. They aren't asking for any funds from us, but they would like to issue bonds on our behalf, and they have their own revenue stream to pay for it. And that concludes the
So
information.
are there questions regarding, I guess, the process? We're not asking you to delve in individually into each of these or determine an amount today of how much you might be able to fund and those kinds of things, but maybe in terms of the process, questions related to that, or Angela says no? Okay.
What's, when we initially set the budget process up last October, we were to receive these proposals from the public. We have done so. In terms of process, we didn't really set up a process of how we would handle them once we received them.
Well, we sort of did, because
Yeah, help me with this.
okay, so we have some of these things I think are going to fall under CDBG, and we can provide feedback on which things we think should move forward to be considered for CDBG funding. And then other ones, I thought the idea was if they fell under a specific department, they would be forwarded to that department for review. For example, the Transit Action Network 277 had a question about service at Indian Springs to Mission. That would be the sort of thing we would refer to the transit department to take a look at, right? Or there was one about the Humane Society and animal control issues. That would get referred to animal control for review, I would say, within their purview, as part of their budget. So I think the question is, how do we as a commission now get the feedback to staff as to which things are just not within our strategic plan, which things need to go to a department, and which things need to be considered by CDBG?
You know, I looked through those quickly again. I guess, and maybe that's why you have it highlighted, Reggie, I don't know. The Fair Association is a different animal than these other requests. And the reason it's different is because it's founded on a statute that was adopted by a prior county commission many, many years ago. And there are statutory issues as well as funding obligations. Now, I think this issue of whether they want to be funded and how it's going to be funded, whether it's GO or revenue or so forth, but it's not a charitable contribution. Everything else on there, for the most part, strikes me as having the quality of a 501c3 or some charitable good works kind of, and I'm not saying they don't. I'm just saying that every county has a fair, and it's based on a state statute. And it's an animal of a different creature to me and what we should be considering. It should not be lumped in with the 6.7 million.
So I think that's the discernment we want to do. I think Angela's right in the assessment of how we did set this up. The idea was we would direct some of these to departments. We would direct some of them to CDBG for consideration. And we have a CDBG meeting coming up where we're going to evaluate CDBG in a pretty comprehensive way. We're going to touch on it today, but we're going to dedicate a whole meeting because CDBG is a bigger deal, and we need to spend some time really at a comprehensive look at CDBG. So what we could do is delegate the ones that go to CDBG out. Then we come back after we've sent some that go to departments, and we could go through this list today, or we could ask the staff to evaluate these for us and make recommendations to say, we think these should go to departments, we think these should go to CDBG discussion, and we think these are ones like the Fair Association that need to be considered by the commission as a whole, and then divide them up that way, and then the ones that would be divided up by the commission as a whole would be ones that don't fit into a department for evaluation, and don't go to CDBG. Then we would just have to decide if this is part of our strategic plan. And the question is, do you want the staff to do that discernment? And then we would approve it. I mean, they'd say, these are the ones we think should go to each department. They'd give us 3 categories. And Commissioner McGee's got the answer.
Yeah, I think I do have the answer. You appointed, actually, Brian McKiernan, sorry, Brian, and Commissioner Markley to begin this process. They've done a lot.
I'm so glad I did that.
You did. They've
That was
done a lot
brilliant.
of legwork, and they got us this far. In all the years I've been here, this is the most fabulous presentation I've ever seen, and clear, easy to understand. Commissioner Markley's already done a ton of work on this. I agree with you. I think she's headed in the right direction. I say for the rest of us, unless people disagree, obviously, that it goes back to McKiernan and Markley, and that they go through this. Markley, I already know, has a good handle on it. I think that's not just strategic planning, but we were talking about on our break, what gives us incredible guidance with community development block grant money is our survey.
Absolutely.
So now they've got direction from us in the way of the survey, in the way of our strategic planning, and they already know what the process is. I think they can come back very quickly if they'll take it.
Do you share that confidence?
Yes.
Okay, if you would provide us a brief summary, when do you think you could have that for us? Sometime between now and the 20th. Okay. Okay.
2 weeks.
I mean, 2 weeks, for crying out loud, this is a luxury. Kane and then Townsend.
The Wyandotte County Fair Association wanted, the fair is huge. And I don't know if any of us have got our arms around what we're supposed to do. One, what we should do, what we're supposed to do, and then another factor is how important the fair is to the community. So I don't know who would get that assignment, but somebody needs to bring all of us up to date on what our obligation is. Because I'm not sure I know what it is.
Well, I hear that. I think what we need to do, I agree with that. I agree with that. Commissioner Townsend?
Thank you. So Commissioner Markley and Commissioner McKiernan will take all of these 33, 38, whatever the number is, with the exception of the CDBG that's already segmented.
Well,
And
some of
analyze
these will
each
go
of
to
them.
CDBG.
And there'll be some more. Okay. So each one will be accounted for in some fashion. Okay.
And then we'll approve
And then
that,
we will.
because we might have, somebody might say, oh, maybe this one should move into a different category.
And
But they'll do the head start for us.
But that's not the same as saying money will be awarded, right? That's coming back. Okay. Okay.
And what I'm going to do, Commissioner Townsend, is I got some information from staff. I've made some notes in general about CDBG that I'm just going to go ahead and provide Commissioner Markley and McKiernan. They can do what they want with it. For example, a couple of concerns I have is obviously I want them to marry it up with the survey strategic planning, but also when we talk about salary studies of fire and police, 1/3 of our community development block grant money that we receive from the federal government goes to staff. I am having a hard time getting my hands around how we have to pay $900,000 and some dollars worth of staff time to work on 5 to 10 projects. I need to understand that better. So I'm going to pass that over to Commissioner Markley, and then they can come back and tell me what they figure out. There you go.
As well? Commissioner Maddox, and we'll come over. Go ahead, Commissioner Maddox.
Well, thank you. I echo what Ann has said. I think I've mentioned this the last 2 budget sessions, that it is a concern for me that money that's supposed to go to improving the community, supposed to go to areas where there's low mod income individuals, where people need resources the most. I have a problem understanding how a lot of that money is going towards staff. And so that is a concern for me, and I would like for Angela and Commissioner Martin and Commissioner McKinnon to look into that. But then also, I'm concerned when when the money does not go into places where low mod income individuals are concentrated. So every district has their individuals who may be low mod income or well-to-do. And so I'm thinking, when I say low mod income, you think the 1st district, you think the 4th district, you think the 3rd district, where people are suffering the most. That's where those funds would surface. And I'm just saying, when we move forward strategically in that manner, I hope that is recognized, that is where the most low mod income individuals are concentrated in that process.
Okay. Thank you. That's good. We need to make sure that money is being directed into the locations that it is intended to go. Commissioner Philbrook and then Kane. No, Kane?